Good morning. It's almost 9 o'clock, and I'm still trying to wake up. Coffee done. Trying to get a little liquid. Wake up with my energy drink this morning. Hmm. We gonna make it. I've been reading through the Gospel of Mark, and remember last time that we talked about how Jesus and the Pharisees and the religious teachers, they had this confrontation. And the Pharisees, religious teachers, they were asked Jesus, why aren't your disciples doing what they're supposed to do? They're talking about washing their hands in a ceremonial way, a ceremonial washing. And um, Jesus got into this conversation about, the traditions of the elders, or the oral law, or what had been handed down, what the man-made law, you might say, was, and how the Pharisees and religious teachers, they um, they thought that was just as important as God's law. And so we're going to continue with that now. Um, Verse 9 says this, and he, Jesus, continued, "You have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. For Moses said, 'Honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses their father or mother is to be put to death.' But you say that if anyone declares that what might have been used to help their father or mother is Corban, that is, devoted to God, then you no longer let them do anything for their father or mother. Thus, you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and you do many things like this." Okay, let's stop there. And again, Jesus saying you care more about your traditions than you care about God. He was talking last time about how they cared so much about the ceremonial cleansing, of washing their hands in a certain way, saying a certain prayer before they eat. And that was as important as anything God had said or anything God talked about. See, when Jesus says, uh, for Moses said, honor your father and mother, basically, this is the law of Moses, which is not actually the law. That's what it's called, the law of Moses, but it's the law that God handed down to Moses. So it's really God's law, but it's called the law of Moses oftentimes. And what's happening here is this law of Moses is very clear about honoring your parents, your mother and father. I mean, made the top 10, was I call the 10 commandments. It's one of those biggies, honor your father and your mother. And actually, if you curse your mother or father, then you are supposed to be put to death. That's that important. But what's happening is the traditions the traditions say that you can actually kind of get out of taking care of your parents, because the stuff you would use to take care of your possessions, your money, and so forth, you could say, well, this, I'm dedicating it to God. It's a special dedication. It's called Corban. It's just a word that we don't use today, but that's what it meant. It was possessions or money or whatever that was devoted to God. Though I don't think they didn't actually use it for God. They just called it that. And so a son could dishonor his parents basically by not using all of that he had to take care of them, in their old age or whatnot. Instead of using money to buy them food, he could tell his parents, "Well, let me go see if I can find you some food. I can't use my money because that's devoted to God. It's devoted to God. I'm going to use it for something else, whatever I want. But so I'm not going to actually use it to help you. I'll see if I can help you in another way. And if I can't, well, I'm sorry." And so the tradition said you could actually do that. And the person doing this could actually seem ultra religious. On one hand, they're saying, "Oh, I'll see what I can do. I'll try to help you." On the other hand, what they have that can help by the traditions, it's supposedly devoted to God, so they don't have to use it. And so they're doing both, supposedly helping mother and father. On the other hand, keeping the tradition. Okay. And the fact is, verse 13 says, "Thus you nullify the word of God by your tradition that you've handed down." You nullify. In other words, you do away with God's law, honor your mother and father. You do away with that because you're upholding this tradition. And he goes on to say, you do many things like this. So he's saying, y'all have these kinds of oral laws. Okay. Let's look at 14 through 19. Again, Jesus called the crowd to him, and he said, "Listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside a person can defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles them." After he had left the crowd and near the house, his disciples asked him about this parable. "Are you still so dull?" he asked. "Don't you see that nothing that enters a person from the outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into their heart, but into their stomach, and then out of the body." In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Now, Jesus is again, he goes from the Corbin issue, he goes back to the issue that brought all this up. And that was, the way that the disciples were eating foods. And he's saying, don't you know whatever you eat or the way you wash your hands and stuff like that, that's not what is important to God. It's the ceremonial cleanliness or being ceremonially clean that Jesus was saying that's not what's important. Um, and also, what's not important is how you wash your hands. It's how you in let's see here. We go back to verse 4 says, "When you go in the marketplace, you eat. We do not eat unless we wash." And they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. It's all of these things. They're not important. It's not how you eat or what you eat in. It's what comes from inside that's important. It's not what goes in your stomach. It's what comes out of your heart. It's not what you eat, which will go in and then eventually come out. It's what is important to you. It's what's laying on your heart that's important. And then there's a side note. He goes on and says, in saying this, there's a little parentheses, in my Bible. It says, in saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Now, Mark was a disciple of Peter. Peter was probably told him most, if not all, of the things that Mark put in. And Mark remembers a story that Peter, I'm sure Peter had told him about. And we can read the story. Luke describes it in the book of Acts, chapter 10. Go read the story. It's a pretty neat story. But synopsis, basically what it is this. Peter is on a roof, and God speaks to him. He gives him this dream or this vision, and it's a blanket laid out, got all kinds of food. A lot of the food that's on that, or actually probably all the food that's on there, it's unclean animals. And the voice says, eat. And Peter says, wait a minute, I can't eat these foods. They're unclean. And God says, anything I've made clean is clean. You can, basically, he's telling him, you can eat anything. You don't have to worry about whether or not they're clean or not. I'm making all things clean. And so what Mark just he puts in a side note, and by saying this, Jesus already said all foods are clean. We just didn't realize it. All right. All right. Verse 20 through 23. He went on, Jesus, he went on, what comes out of a person is what defiles them, for it is from within, out of a person's heart, that evil thoughts come: sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside and defile a person. Okay, these are the things that come from within that's sinful. It's not what you eat that is sinful. It's the things that weigh on your heart. It's the thoughts that your heart brings to mind. It's what is important to you. Let's look at these again. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. But it says, for it is from within, from a person's heart, that evil thoughts come from. Sexual immorality. This is things that we desire. Theft. We desire whatever it is we steal. Murder. Adultery. We desire another person's wife, or we have a wife or a husband and desire somebody else's. Greed. A desire. Malice. Deceit. Lewdness, envy, slander, talking bad about others, arrogance, pride, thinking I'm better, or thinking I'm better than I am, and folly. All these evil, all of all these evils come from inside and defile a person. The things that you desire that are contrary to God's will for you and for others, that's what defiles you, not what you eat. That's what Jesus is trying to say. So let us pay attention today to what comes out of us, and make sure that the things that come out, things we say, the things we do, let's just pay attention and see if um, they're defiling us or harming our witness for Jesus Christ. Uh, just take an honest look today. There may be things that you don't do, but these are just some of the examples of the things that might be in our hearts today, things we think about. Let's think good thoughts today and godly thoughts. I pray today that you're safe from this virus. I pray that you have a good day.